You ever get tired of the noise of social media and you just yearn for some good old fashioned common sense? Well, in today's episode, we're going to give you a little bit of that. Welcome to I believe it's the 171st episode of Stories of Service, Ordinary People Who Do Extraordinary Work. I'm the host of Stories of Service, Teresa Carpenter, and Charles Hamm. Mr. Hamm, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for having me on your show.
Well, thank you so much for for me giving me the opportunity to have the show. And before we even do get started, I also want to play a little bit of an intro from my dear old dad, Charlie Pickard.
From the moment we're born and lock eyes with our parents, we are inspiring others. By showing up as a vessel of service, we not only help others, we help ourselves. Welcome to S.O.S, Stories of Service, hosted by Teresa Carpenter, here from ordinary people from all walks of life who have transformed their communities by performing extraordinary work.
And in this episode,
Oh,
yes, that's my father. He's actually he was a voiceover artist and a DJ for a number of years.
well, that was
So,
special. That was
yeah.
special.
The first episode that I did, I interviewed him and I asked him to read that to start the episodes. And I had it on my voiceover uh, for the voice only part of the podcast. And only recently I was like, well, why don't I just play the video when I start to do the show? And so
Oh,
now for those of you that are watching this on video, you'll see that I play it, but then I also do it for the audio as well. So, and it's easier now because I don't have to edit it in. It's just I automatically have it as part of the tape. So oh, go ahead.
no, I was just surprised by it, and I thought it was special. It's a novel way to start your show.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I figure as we all know, our parents aren't going to be around forever, and it was a real treat to have that
Yes,
kind of a memory to get this
yes,
started. So
absolutely.
as I said, today we're sitting down with Texas to the Bone Charles Hamm, a former Marine sergeant, retired entrepreneur, and 3 times #1 international best-selling author. And we'll be talking about this book today, Ponder at Pilgrims. With over 75 years of life experience, he's worn many hats from doting husband and grandfather to social media sensation and celebrated author. Residing in the Texas countryside, Charles turned to social media as an outlet for reflections on society, inclusivity, and mindful living. His authentic voice resonated, attracting an engaged following of over 26,000 fans. Encouraged by his audience, Charles compiled his musings into the acclaimed book Ponder on It Pilgrims, the Bucolic Mark Twain on Critter Councils, Cookie Bandits, and Texas Grit. Now sold in 26 countries, the book has received widespread praise for its witty and insightful take on self reflection and positivity in the digital age. And today we're going to be talking about your journey from marine life to best selling author, growing up and living in Texas, and how it shaped his perspectives on resilience and grit. What was the inspiration behind the book? And all of your thoughts on mindfulness, living authentically in our rapidly changing world. Welcome again, Charles.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
So, I always ask my guests who have served in the military, where were you born and raised, and what inspired you to join the Marine Corps?
Well, I'm a Texan, have been all my life. Uh, Lived up in East Texas and then moved into the Houston area when I was uh, in my late teens. Uh, the the decision to join the Marine Corps was there's a story there in and of itself. When I was a little boy, my daddy and I used to watch this show on TV called Victory at Sea. And I remember one particular show where there were Marines going over the side of a ship, uh, and I didn't understand completely what all was going on, but it was to launch an invasion of one of the islands in the Pacific during World War II. And I saw these men going over the side of the ship on this rope ladder, and getting down into this little boat and then heading off toward the beach. And I remembered telling my daddy that when I grew up, that's what I wanted to do.
Right.
And I remember him saying, "No, I don't want you to ever have to do that." And that didn't mean that much to me. But I knew where he was coming from later. But when I was 19, I joined the Marine Corps after I got out of high school. And the most ironic thing happened because I went over to Vietnam with the 5th Marine Regiment in the early days of the war during the buildup. The 1st Marine Division was still at Camp Pendleton, and I went across the Pacific on an LST and went through more training over in Okinawa, and then we got on an APA and headed south. And I'm just young and naive and not knowing too much, and we I never thought about how we were going to get off this boat, but just woke up one morning, they shook us out and we went up the top side, and I stood there and I looked out and I could see land off in the distance, and I realized that this is Vietnam, and we're here.
Yeah.
And I'm having thoughts, but we actually literally went over the side of that ship on rope ladders, and I had my rifle and all my 782 gear. Everything I was carrying it with me, and went down the side of that ship on that rope ladder, just like it had been in the movie back when I was a little boy watching it with my dad. And got down to the bottom at Higgins' boat, and once we filled up, they pulled away and others filled up until finally we all started out for shore, and actually made an amphibious, I went ashore in Vietnam at an amphibious landing under full combat conditions. And I never, but about halfway down the side of the ship, I remembered thinking about being with my dad that time. But that was an interesting experience, and one that I'll always remember. And it's a story that I don't mind telling about Vietnam. It was something quite unique. I think everybody else was flying in after we got over there, and I was probably one of the last Marines to make an amphibious landing like that in the way they did in Korea in World War II.
Wow. What was your experience overall like in Vietnam?
Well, as one would respect, I was in the Marine Corps, and we I was around Chulai most of the time, in out south of Da Nang, and our basic overall mission was to keep the airfield there at Chulai safe. It was a prime target, and we were tasked with making sure everything stayed the way it should there around that airfield. So did a lot of patrolling, and I've spent many a night in a bunker along the South China Sea with a buddy and a M60 machine gun in case they tried to sneak in, from the ocean. So that was pretty much it. And it was it was an experience that stayed with me.
Stayed with you.
Stayed with me. Yes, it did.
Well, I thank you for your service, and I think that as a GWAT veteran, which is what I've been referred to now, for someone like myself, we always must think back and remember the people that came before us, the World War I veterans, the World War II veterans, Vietnam veterans like yourself. I think it's so important that we don't forget our heritage and where we've come from, and the lessons learned too that have happened in these various conflicts. I think it's very
Right.
important that we
Right.
take those on board. So you served in Vietnam. You did your 4 years in the Marine Corps, and
Mhm.
then give me a little bit about what happened after that.
Well, I got married and started a family. My wife and I have been married 57 years,
Wow.
and yeah, I pretty much decided to just soldier on now. It's this late into it. Raised three great kids, and I have seven grandchildren, and I call them my cookie bandits. That's where Cookie Bandits comes from on the cover of
Mhm.
Podderodic Pilgrims. I've
Yep.
always called them Cookie Bandits, and
Looking at the book right now.
yeah, that's all my critters. We're sitting on the
Yep,
front
yep.
porch of the cabin,
Mhm.
uh, and there's seven little Cookie Bandits in the picture if you count them, and then all the main characters of around the critters of Round Mountain. Uh, I went to college on the GI Bill,
Mhm.
and I'd mentioned, I think, my interest in history, and I thought I wanted to be an archaeologist,
Hmm.
and so I I, I studied. I majored in classical Greek and Hebrew, the languages, and I thought that might give me an important, part of being an archaeologist. I pictured myself somewhere scratching around in the dirt and finding a clay tablet and being able to read it, and the realities. I got to where I didn't want to be an archaeologist because they're very very dogmatic about not a lot of room for creative thinking, and I'm stubborn as a mule when it comes to doing my own thinking.
Right.
I insist on my right to have my own thoughts, and
Yes.
I'll listen to you, and I may agree with you, but I'm not going to just believe everything someone else says. But
Sure.
I never became an archaeologist, and uh, I went on and started some businesses and just sort of lived by my wits. And some of them were more successful than others, and there's a story behind them all. But uh, sometimes people will ask me what how I felt about such a worthless degree, to spend all that time. It's like someone kind of like majored in poetry or something.
Sure.
Charles, what were you thinking? And
Philosophy,
I,
yes.
yeah, that sort of thing. But that's the kind of stuff I'm interested in.
Right.
And I told them they wanted to know what had been the value of my education, and I said, well, the biggest thing that I found through the years was that when someone finds out you majored in classical Greek and Hebrew, they just automatically kind of assume you're smart.
Yes, I was thinking the same thing,
Yeah,
actually.
and I told them, I realized that I could play that for a while until they got me figured out, and so I've used it to my advantage in different ways, that I
Mhm.
never even really realized before. But my life's been typical. The most ironic thing that happened to me was that as I got older, uh, there's the story of how the book came to be and becoming an author, and I never dreamed that my life would end up actually being an author. I've written my second book, and it's being shopped with publishers now, and I'm working on my third one. And
Wow.
the second one's Texas Grit. If you follow me on LinkedIn, you know the little Texas Grit sayings. It's a book full of Texas Grit sayings. And the third one is a little different, and it's more me, I guess. The working title that I'm using right now is Refusing God and Our Knowledge. And I'm talking about just different things that have to do with history, and I take issue with some of the sacred cows of the different scientific disciplines. Uh, uh, I'm a creationist unapologetically, and I can sit and talk with anybody about it, even who don't believe that way, and hold my own. Although I don't think God needs me to try to prove to others that He exists. I kind of resist even the whole concept of it. But it is a book that I'm writing, and so here I am,
I love it.
70. Yeah, I was 78 years old, soon to be 79 in March, and I'm having the time of my life.
I love it. I love it,
I,
Charles.
it,
I
it
mean,
yeah,
it
I
just
mean,
shows me like,
I'm having fun, just
yeah. It just
just
goes to show you that you just never know what
no,
is going to happen and where
no,
your next
no,
chapter is going to arise. So to give the
absolutely.
audience a little bit of background on this book and what you can expect is that it's just this wonderful collection of different stories from your life and different types of experiences, and each part of it is really neat because it's actually a pretty easy read too, which I
Yes,
like. There's pictures in
yes.
here. There's parts of it like you guys can hear. I'll put myself full screen so you guys can see real quick. But there's just pictures where you can just, or parts of the book where you can just see where there's just something simple that Charles passes,
Uh-huh.
or there's just like the images of certain animals. I love all the different critters and animals that
Yes.
you've got that you've named, and you talk about the things that they're doing and
Uh-huh.
what they're up to and how they interact with one another. I thought that was really a neat part of the book. I just loved it. Absolutely. And actually, we have a few other visitors that I wanted to acknowledge and recognize as we're going through the call. So I don't know who LinkedIn user is, but someone said, "Nice to hear your voice, Mr. Charles." Uh,
Oh,
Another person here, Lamin, said, "Good to hear from you, Mr. Charles." And then
that's good.
Todd is also on the call, and he says, "Todd here." And then my
Yes.
friend Jessica, another prior SOS guest, said, "I love his hat."
Okay.
And so a lot of people. Oh, and Todd wants to know how much cowboy is in this book.
Not not a whole lot. A lot of Texan.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but not it the way the book developed, it just sort of happened. I I would sit on my cabin porch. I have some land up in the country, little cabin up there, and I've always enjoyed solitude, and I'm not a loner, but I don't mind being alone. And I've always enjoyed being by myself. And I would sit there on the cabin porch, and I'd just think, and I'd watch the hummingbirds and just ponder on different things. And stuff started coming to me, and I would write a little something on LinkedIn, and just tell people what I thought. And I started getting a following. And one of the things that I noticed in the beginning was it seemed to me, I'm not a big news junkie, but I keep up with what's going on. And as I looked at the political and social issues of our country during this time, it struck me that no matter what side of an issue, political or social, that you seemed to be taking, it seemed like everybody was mad. And I'm like, nobody's happy. I mean,
Right.
it's like, and I thought, I'm not mad. What's going on? And so the basic initial uh, thing that drove my writing was just kind of telling everybody to calm down.
I love it.
You know, just get a grip. Quit driving yourself crazy over things, you know, thinking about things that you can't do
Can't
anything
control.
about,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's
completely
a
out of
big
your
one.
control.
Mhm.
You know, and just enjoy life and be happy and be thankful and be grateful. And people, I just started getting these unbelievable comments from people. They were just saying the nicest things to me and about what I was saying. And I I had a hard time. I didn't know how to respond to this. I mean,
You
I
weren't
never,
expecting it.
no, I mean, I was just shocked at what was happening. And I, I realized that the only thing I can say is thank you. I was thinking there's got to be some superlative to better tell people how I feel about how what they're saying to me and the encouragement that I was getting from them. But I, I, I just, someone makes a comment and I thank them for their comment and maybe make some comment about what they've said. But it all just sort of happened, and I got the idea of personifying all the critters up on Round Mountain, and I chose a white-tailed doe and named her Thelma, and she became the matriarch of Round Mountain and all the critters on Round Mountain. And every Saturday morning, we had a Round Mountain Critter Council meeting that met at 10 o'clock every Saturday morning. And all the heads of the different critter clans on Round
Yep.
Mountain, and they all had names. Spuds was the leader of the Wild Hog clan. And anyway, and I would tell stories about this and just had a lot of fun.
I love it.
And uh, someone one day said, "Mr. Charles, you need to write a book." And I didn't know what to say, and I said, "Well, I'm pondering on it," and which I really wasn't. But, but but when I said that, he shut up, didn't say any more about it. But then people started. I started getting this. You need to write a book, and I
Oh my
always tell them
god.
I'm pondering on it, you know. And one day, this man named Philip Reed, a young fella, uh, he wrote and he said, "You need to write a book, Mr. Charles." And I said, "Well, I'm pondering on it." And he wrote me back and he said, "No, you're not getting this." He said, "You need to write a book." And he just set in on me,
Mhm.
and he said, "I've got I know an editor, someone that can do this, and I'm going to put you in touch with her. You need to write a book." And so this wonderful lady from up in Minnesota, Miss Hillary Jastrom, uh, called me. And now this thing's starting to get out of hand. I mean, it's going, you know. And I talked to her for about an hour and a half. And when I got off the phone, I was writing the book.
Wow.
And so that book became ponder on it, Pilgrims. I called my followers Pilgrims, and the story of that is that life is a pilgrimage, and we're all on this pilgrimage together. And so I would call my people on LinkedIn, I'd call them Pilgrims.
Mm-hmm.
So when I just started writing the book, I asked them what they thought I ought to name the book, what the name of the book would be. And it was like, duh, Mr. Charles, ponder on it, Pilgrims, because that was what I always said to them after everything that I wrote. I'd say, ponder on it. The whole idea, my whole mission in life has been to get people to stop and think. And I've tried to live my life just stopping and thinking about stuff before I shot my mouth off, or
Sure.
just try to have some self-control. And the I feel like I'm starting to ramble.
No, I'm just listening. I
No.
mean, I usually ask a lot more questions or I
Uh-huh.
jump in, Charles, but you're such a breath of fresh air. I mean, it's just, I think that's what it is that people just are so hungry for somebody who is like, let's get it. Like even Mark said this, and Mark has got a book coming out soon. I think Lessons Learned from the Admiral. He'll probably correct me if I said it wrong, but his book I can't wait to read. Calm down, get a grip, be happy, be grateful. Powerful message, Teresa. The only thing I can say is thank you. Love it. And that's how I'm feeling as I listen to the stuff that you're saying.
What happened, and this is the history of the book. I'm sitting up on the cabin porch pondering on things, and I hesitate to say it, but it seemed that there was something providential happening to me that I couldn't explain. I would just have these thoughts and would take a note or two and then have something to write before a post on LinkedIn.
Sure.
And I was one day I started thinking about a couple of things, and it turned out to be the bedrock of everything that I was trying to say. I realized something that I'd never thought about before. I thought to myself, when was the last time that I ever heard someone referred to as wise?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, I can't remember. You hear people, there's smart people, geniuses, and
Sure.
and all kinds
Visionary.
of all sorts of superlatives. But when was the last time that I heard someone referred to as wise? And I couldn't think of a time. And so I started toying around in my mind with the concept that this is not only a word that we seem to be losing in our vocabulary, we seem to be losing the concept itself.
Or the value of it, the value of being wise.
All of this. And so I don't consider myself a wise man. I had someone ask me, a year or so ago, I guess now, he said, Mr. Charles, if you could define yourself in just one short sentence, what would you say? And I mean, how do you answer a question?
I know, like
I mean, and I'm sitting there like, what in the world am I going to say? And it was like something just popped into my mind, and I blurted it out. And I thought, you just nailed yourself perfectly. This is exactly what you are. And I told him, I said, I'm an old man struggling not to be an old fool.
I love it. It's
And,
true though. I mean, we're
but that was it. But I realized I started talking about wisdom,
Mhm.
and every time I ask someone, when was the last time you heard someone referred to as wise? I always got the same response. It was like, yeah, I can't remember the last time I
Mhm.
heard it. And so that led to something that what I ended up in the book calling the four golden questions. And there again, this just came to me sitting there in a rocking chair watching the hummingbirds. But
Mhm.
I realized that there are four things that we do as human beings all day long, every single day of our lives, no matter whether we're a man or a woman, no matter what our race or whatever our nationality. It's something that is inherent in the basic fabric of our nature as human beings. We do these four things. And the first one that came to me was we do things.
Mhm.
Every single day, we're up doing things.
Doing something. We're doers.
Well, yeah,
We
we're
we
doers.
make things happen, or we should
And
be doers.
yes, and we say things all day
Mhm.
long. We're talking, we're doing
Yep.
stuff, we're talking to people. And this is just so common. And I'd never thought about it like this before. And the third one, now I'm really kind of getting into this, and I'm pondering and saying, that's two. Is there another one? What would be another one? And I thought, we think things. Our minds are working all the time,
Constantly.
all day long, constantly,
Mhm.
just reveries and just
Mhm.
nonsense,
Yep.
uh, but occasionally a good thought. But I mean, we're constantly thinking about things. And then there was a fourth one. We feel things.
Think, say, do, feel.
We and I thought, well, I've gotten four of them. Is there another one? And I thought, and I thought, and I thought, and these had just sort of come to me, and now I'm trying to force something that wasn't there. But it took me a while to realize, no, you've got this, because I'd think of something else, but it was already implied in
Implied in one
in
of the
in
other
in,
4.
in, in one of the other four.
Mhm.
And then it hit me, the four golden questions. If you're about to do something that's of consequence, which a lot of things we do aren't, but when we're about to do something, ask yourself, what would be the wise thing to do?
Mm.
And all of a sudden, I realized that I was on to something, because I was liking what this was doing in my own head. I'm
Right.
like, wow, that really kind of slows things down and gets you thinking. And then I thought, what would be the wise thing to say?
Mm.
When you think of all the well, I speak for myself, all the stupid things I've said through the years
Sure.
that I wish I hadn't said. And but to stop and think about what you're going to say. Words are so powerful. They're the most powerful thing in the world. And then I thought, well, what would a wise person think? And I
Mm.
realized now I'm internalizing this, and we can control what's on our minds.
Mhm.
We can allow all sorts of stuff to get into our heads. But if we think wisely, and ask ourselves, what would a wise person be thinking? This is changing my life as
Yeah.
I'm going through this. And then the last one, what would a wise person feel? And this is the one that I really love the most. What's in your heart? how do you feel about things? Are you a forgiving person? I mean, all of the emotions. It really resonated with me, and I called them the four golden questions.
Yeah.
And
I really love that part of the
yeah,
book.
when I speak, and that really is to me what the book is all about, directly and indirectly. And then I came up with the three, with the golden triad: wisdom, knowledge, and understanding,
Mhm.
and the importance of the three. And all of this is just kind of an experience that's happening in my life, and I just kind of went along with it, and it turned into books, and it turned into some uh, public speaking. I love speaking. I wish I had more of it to do, but it's hard to break into something like that. People don't know who you are, and I'm not exactly a famous, well-known person at all. But I do love to speak, and uh, I've had I spoke at Texas A&M for
I love it.
the people up there, and I've had done some speaking, but uh, generally, I just kind of became this old guy that is gone back to the initial beginnings of all of this. I felt like I had something to say,
Yeah. And I think what
and
you've
I
done is
started saying
beautiful.
it. Yeah, and I just
I
started
love
saying
it.
it. Yeah.
I mean, Mark Fava, he's still on the call, and he said, yeah, the four things and four questions: do things, say things, think things, feel things. Lots of wisdom here from a wise old man on the porch in a rocking chair watching hummingbirds. Love this fresh and meaningful way of living life. And
Uh,
I agree. I think that it is so underestimated, the power of just sitting in your thoughts and
yes.
reflecting, but not obsessing, not
Yes.
ruminating. That's
Right.
there's a difference. And when I started a blog, that's how I got started in the online world, other than doing advocacy for animals. I also started in 2014, so it's now been 10 years, my blog, Teresa's Tapestries. And if you look
Oh,
at like the little logo to the blog, it was insights and observations of daily living. And it was very similar to what you did, Charles. I would have these experiences about building boundaries or the mean girls, things that had always really hurt my heart or that I'd struggled with. And as I
mhm.
started to get some insights about what was driving some of these behaviors or why these things got to me the way they did, I realized, and I think we can all do this, is I could see my heart in some of these issues. And I started to try to understand how I could own my side of the street.
Yes.
And it was
Yes.
really insightful, to do that, and having that blog where I could put some of my thoughts on paper, I could share what I was discovering, I found to be really meaningful. And I think these are the things that the internet and social media really does do people good. And when we use it in this kind of way, and not in a way that's divisive, but in a way where we talk about the issues, and we don't have to agree, and it's okay when we don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, People, if you ask me what I think, I'll tell you.
Sure.
I'm not passing judgment on you. I'm just telling you what I think. If you have a
Right.
different idea, let's hear it,
Sure.
and we can talk. And I realized another thing that I talk a bit about in the book is things like anger and our emotions, negative emotions. And I realized that no one can make you angry. You can become angry, as a result of something that someone may have done or said. But basically, it's a choice you make. Someone said something that I don't like, and my choice is to let them spoil my whole day being angry.
Right. It
Or,
is your
or
choice.
yeah, it's a choice. No one can offend you. Some people seem to uh, they seem to seek something to be offended about, but no one can offend me unless I choose to feel offended.
Correct.
And that's when you really start taking control of yourself and your life. And like I say, all of this, just some old jarhead, that had kind of kicked around, kicked around in life, and at an old age, elderly man, uh, just started. Uh, I go back. Something hit me sitting on that porch.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I had something to say.
Well,
And I had developed a little bit of a forum on LinkedIn. There were people that followed me. And so I had someone to say it to. And I started doing these posts, and now I'm bumping up about 27,000 followers on LinkedIn now. And my kids tease me, my son especially. He said, "Dad, of all the people in the family that would have turned out to be some kind of a internet, social
sensation.
media personality, you would have been the last person in the family that anybody would have ever thought of." And it really is true. But there was, I never lost or forgot where I came from. This all
Mm-hmm.
started because I felt like I had something to say, and I always go back to that, saying it's like I have a message that I
Right.
believe in, and I want to pass on to other people, that there's a better way. You can choose to be happy, and you can be tolerant of other people. You can't make everybody else in the world uh, love everybody else in the
No.
world, but you can.
Yes. Yes, you can. And
You can
absolutely.
start there and be content, and do that, and and it'll work wonders for you. And uh, it it just really worked. It changed the way I looked at things, and
Well,
so
Charles,
I've
I feel so
tried to share
similar.
that.
I was going to
Yes.
say, I feel so similar to what you're saying. It wasn't until I started this podcast and then I was given a couple opportunities to co author books. Very special thanks to Dr. Karen Hills Pruden and the other book author whose name escapes me at the moment that will come to me. But I've had two wonderful opportunities to do that. And that was amazing. And just the idea that I could, like you, put out blogs that people would read and
Mhm.
sometimes have some sort of ability to share on some of the observations that we all see and to have those conversations, it really is impactful. And I think that what I would love to see us do, and what I try to do so much on my social media pages, is that yes, I do have certain views on political issues. And
Mhm.
yes,
We
I
all
do
do.
I do take a stand sometimes, like I'm doing
Uh-huh.
right now on the prospective Secretary of Defense. And there's going to be people that aren't going to like those stands, and that's
Mhm.
okay. And there's going to be
Yeah.
people who disagree with some of the points that I've made. And if they want to disagree and they want to disagree in the comments, I'm okay with that,
Yeah.
as long as there's no personal attacks and as long as they're not
Right.
using what I call a logical fallacy.
Uh-huh.
So, and if it was not even what I call it's basically not arguing on the merits of the point, but trying to distract or do something
Right.
that's misleading. But I think there's ways to do that and not be emotional or upset because, like you said,
Sure.
Charles, I can't control if the SecDef gets nominated or not. I can only
No.
share my opinion on it
Right.
and have a discussion on things that matter to me as a member of the military. That is something that directly impacts my community, and it's
Sure.
something that I felt passionate about. I'm just using that as an example, but I think that it's really important that we provide safe spaces where people's views are are heard and understood, even if they're views that are in complete conflict with one another. That's
Mhm.
okay. And let's also have discussions about facts and about what the ground truth of issues are so that
Sure.
people can make informed decisions.
Sure. Sure. There's no reason why we shouldn't be that way. And uh, I've mentioned before that, and it's caused me a certain amount of difficulty through the years in circles, but I insist on my right to do my own thinking.
Mhm.
And but I realize that you have the same right as I do. And, we probably don't think the same way about some things, but it'd be interesting to talk to you about it and see where we differ as well as where we agree.
Mhm. I
And
agree.
in the final analysis, I mean, I'm not going to dislike someone because they don't see something the way that I do.
Me
Uh,
neither.
my
Never.
and it may sound hokey, but I want to love everybody. When every post I put on LinkedIn, after I say what I have to say, which is usually just some short little blip I call Texas grit,
Yep.
I tell them, I say, ponder on it, pilgrims. And then I say, I love y'all. And the reason I say I love y'all is because I do love every one of those wonderful people that follow me on LinkedIn.
I love them.
They're my family, and I owe them so much. Uh, and I wish that I could meet every last one of them, give them a hug, uh, but they they followed me and are have just been so nice and encouraging to me. And so uh, I know they don't all agree with me about everything, but uh, it it doesn't matter. They're just real people like I am, and uh, I feel like I just have a wonderful relationship with all of them, and it really means a lot. And I don't want to lose them. If I, you know, started other things started coming into my life, I'm not going to turn my back on LinkedIn. And to me, LinkedIn is those people.
Right.
Uh,
It's my favorite platform to engage on,
yeah,
Charles. I mean, I have
yeah,
Facebook, I have Instagram, I have X, I have YouTube, but it's the only place where I can really have those meaningful and more deeper level conversations. And I
uh-huh.
really
I feel that
appreciate
way.
that
Yeah,
because
I
I
feel
don't
that way.
have a place where I can really talk about some of these things with people.
Right,
And
right.
it means a lot to me to be able to get my thoughts out about some of these issues and sometimes change my mind on how I see things.
Sure.
I look at some things a certain way for a certain amount of time, and a lot of times, Charles, I'll have a guest on. This happened with some of the initiatives surrounding diversity, equity, and inclusion, which I won't go into that on this show. But I I really saw it a certain way for a number of years, and then I had a couple guests on who really changed my paradigm on how sometimes I see those initiatives and those policies.
Mhm.
And I'm open to that. I'm open
Sure,
to if new
sure.
information comes along or if I change my stance on something, I'll defend it and we'll have a a discussion about that. But what you're also saying reminds me of what Scott Mann, he's another very popular person on LinkedIn, had on Sunday, which was he had a LinkedIn Live that he put together on 1 or 2 day notice, and it was in response to the New Orleans explosion, the truck that drove through the uh, the French Quarter, and then also the Cybertruck explosion. And both of those incidences involved the veteran community. One was active duty; they're both Army. One was a veteran, and we as a community were just kind of like, "What is going on?" And
Yeah.
I think Scott saw this as a moment that our community needed to come together and needed to talk about these issues and talk about security and talk about are are we in danger, and is the veteran community in crisis? And it was just a really great conversation, and it reminded me of all the wonderful people that exist that want
Right.
to come together and want to talk about things that are impacting our community.
Right. Right. And if we need to be nice to each other. I mean,
Yeah.
uh, it's funny to me how folks will think that something that is really simple is profound, and I kind of believe that anything profound is simple, uh, and and if it's hard to understand, it's probably not profound. And
Right.
if the person talking can't explain it in such a way that I can understand it, I don't claim to be the smartest guy in the world, but I'm not a dummy. And if he can't explain it to me in language I can understand, he probably doesn't know what he's talking about.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's but just to be understanding and be nice, have love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness. I mean, these virtues. Uh, Life goes a lot better when you think this way and live this way. And I can say that at least in my case, it's made quite a bit of difference. I've been a work in progress all my life and still am, but uh, there's there's a better way than most people are choosing to follow,
Yeah. I
and
would agree with that.
yeah.
And I hope that people will hear your message, Charles, and take on board the lessons that you're imparting, because I think it's really important. And I think that it's also important for us to take the wisdom and the experiences and the lessons learned from people who have been there, done that. You
Yeah,
know?
I have had some experiences.
So tell me a little bit about what it was like for you once you put the book out, like what the reception was like.
I I just couldn't have been. I was just shocked. Uh, I had no idea what to expect, and the book was put up on Amazon in 19 different genres on Amazon, different places. And on the first day, as I recall, in 16 of the 19 genres, it was a bestseller,
Wow.
and in 3, it was a number 1 bestseller. It actually went to number 1 in 3 of those genres,
That's
and
great.
was a bestseller. And then it became a 3-time #1 international bestseller in just 2 or 3 days. And it's now sold in 26 different countries. I mean, it's
That's incredible.
and I'm like, I mean, I look at myself. It's just hard to imagine that this happened. But I think you said something, and I don't like to talk about myself too much, but I do try to understand myself. And you mentioned something that I hear all the time, and so I'll say it in that context. It the word real
Yeah.
keeps coming up over and over and over again. That the book just kind of rings true as real, and that uh, I I kind of people think of me as just maybe just some guy, you could sit down and
You
talk
can sit
to.
down and have a
Yeah,
conversation
yeah,
with.
and
Yeah.
have some coffee and talk with, and that's really that is all I am. I don't claim to be anything else except just a fellow human being that uh, is is trying to live a good life, and love my family, and love people, and uh, laugh, and
Yeah.
have joy, and uh, just be
Be
have
a
a
good
good life.
person. I know,
Yeah,
I hear you, Charles. I'm the same way, and I think that that's why your book resonated so much, is that you package it up sort of in the Texas grit and the Pilgrims and a little bit of the cowboy, but really what these are is just good, wholesome stories of community, of togetherness, of understanding, of love, and I think that we're hungry. We're hungry for this kind of message because we turn on the news and it's all these people fighting and there's all this conflict. And I have had a thought theory for a while, and that is most people aren't that way at all. Most
oh,
people want to get along, even if they
yes,
believe differently, even if they have different political affiliations. Ultimately, they want to be united. And so
yes,
when somebody like yourself comes along and writes a book that's just about those values, I think it just resonates. And I think that's why your book did so well, is that it's just like you said, common sense, and it's simple, and people can relate to it because they're missing that. They're missing that community and uh, that sense of love and that sense of
yes,
understanding. So
yes.
I'm grateful you
I
did
think
it.
so. I think so. There's one thing that I uh, didn't mention. It's one of my Texas grit sayings. Uh, there's well, my second book is titled Texas Grit, and it's 365 of these sayings. And I've got a whole bunch more that I've come up since then. But one of my favorites, there's several of them that all of them are intended to make you think without me telling you what I think. I just throw this
Mhm.
out there. Never try to give a bobcat a belly rub if he doesn't want one.
Right, right.
Ponder on it, Pilgrim.
Yep.
But one that I think is really resonated with me is the wisdom will always be the first casualty of unrestrained behavior.
Yeah.
If you get that, a whole lot of things start making sense. And So some of the Texas grit is kind of serious, and a lot of it's just fun. Never corner something meaner than you are is what
Oh,
you
yeah.
know,
Oh, yeah. Be careful. Be
yeah,
careful, people.
I just things there again. These things come to mind, and my kids used to tease me about. They call it dad sayings.
Right, right.
I my mind would go that way, and I had all these sayings, and then they became grandpa's sayings.
Yep, yep.
And then my editor, when I wrote the book, some of the Texas grit is in Ponderonic Pilgrims, and she's the one that came up with the idea of calling it Texas grit.
I love
And
it.
so Texas grit started out as dad's sayings and ended up grandpa's sayings, and then it became Texas grit. So that's kind of the story
I
about
love it. I love
that.
it. Well, Charles, we're wrapping up the hour, but this has
Okay.
been such an enjoyable podcast.
I
I've
feel
just
like I feel like I talk too much, I
no.
really I'm normally kind of a man of few words, but I like to talk about this. This is kind of my mission in life, to get a chance to share my thoughts about what I've talked about this evening. And I thank you for the opportunity. It really means a lot to me.
Well,
It really
Charles,
does.
I'm grateful that you took the time to come on. I'm going to go full screen here in just a moment and just do my quick closeout, but I will meet you
Okay.
backstage to say goodbye after I
Okay.
do my closeout.
Okay.
But Charles, thank you so much. I've tagged your LinkedIn profile to the posting that's on LinkedIn, but then I also have your website linked. Please, people, take a look at his amazing book. If you're on LinkedIn, please give him a follow. I love your postings, Charles. I'm always inspired by what you have to say. So thank you so much for taking the time to come on the Stories of Service podcast.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate that.
Awesome. Well, everybody, hold on a second. Let me see if I can find my mouse here. It sort of sometimes dies on me, but there we go. All right, guys, another episode of Stories of Service. Thank you so much for the opportunity for me to come at you or be with you for this evening. Next week, I will actually be in DC. I fly there this Sunday, so I will be on the road and doing a little bit of DC advocacy. So I have not done that before, so it'll be a first for me in the military world. I've done it in the animal world. But I will still have another podcast for you this Thursday, so stay tuned for the episode. And as I always close out these calls, please take care of yourself, take care of each other, and have a wonderful rest of your evening. Bye-bye now.